So now upskilling is a buzzword not just in IT industry now, across corporate and even non-corporate worlds. So does ITC promote upskilling? I mean, do you have any special initiative dedicated to that, or if not, what is your personal model of upskilling that you believe will work for any people?
So there is a basic upskilling which is integral to any corporate setup or from an individual's perspective, is that they are organized learning and development teams as part of the HR function, where trainings get facilitated. Like I talked about career conversations and all of that a little earlier, you identify where are the areas that you need to strengthen, and therefore when you pull them together, you have an organization perspective on the trainings, then the on-the-job training, some of them based on different kind of projects. I talked about pillar roles, which also helps in upskilling. And then, of course, a lot of reading is elementary as part of this upskilling. Some of this is obviously very conventional kind of upskilling, training, reading on the job kind of stuff. But as the world is evolving, what I also been doing as an integral part of myself in terms of how I upskill and how that is also appropriate for everybody else inside our team, and so is the case for anybody outside. A couple of other points. One is that all this thing of training on the job and all of this linked to saying that okay, there is someone who knows the answer, and therefore you learn and then you move, which may be relevant in many areas of technical training and some of those kind of things. But in consumer-centric, other stakeholder-centric evolution of business models and managerial elements, the constant discovery that is required is the new upskilling model that is there. So one, let's say there's three components. One is that you require ability to insight. So you need to constantly strengthen your ability to develop insights. Then how do you understand appreciative inquiry? How do you develop empathy? How do you spend time with your consumers, producers, other stakeholders, so that you see them in their context? So first-hand insighting, and we call this a pilgrimage to the consumer homes or farmers' fields or traders' offices, or wherever that you are doing this developing insight. You go on a pilgrimage for first-hand insighting as an integral part of your role. So that is one area that you need to skill constantly strengthen. The second is ability to experiment. Experimentation is the second area. And the skill that you need to develop is how do I create a portfolio of experiments? There's no one right answer. In the earlier model of upskilling, again, like I said, it's relevant in some areas. There is one right answer. But in many of these areas linked to the inciting, there's no one right answer. You'll have to develop multiple right hypotheses, potentially, experiment with all of them. So how do you create a portfolio of experiments? And then how do you develop and strengthen your hindsight? Also that if this is what I have done in the past, this is what the experiment there, how do you really learn from there? Is skill akin to your hindsight. And then you shortlist what I want to pursue. What it leads to is then the discovery of, okay, I roll out, I have done a portfolio of experiment of, let's say, 7 different ways of doing it. I shortlisted 2 of them as probably more appropriate. I'll pursue them and then make that the dominant logic of my next round of action. And at that point of time, you also require the foresight to say that what potential problems and opportunities will this rollout can can possibly create. So in a way, this is a surrogate of insight. Then the hindsight and the foresight, the three well-known sites. How do you upskill yourself to this new world, given the level of uncertainty? It's not the traditional model of upskilling. And in fact, even in the technology space, the entire model of agile build and development is around this. Then how do you create your squads and tribes and all of that is around this model of the inciting and hindsighting and foresighting, rapid experimentation. So I think this is an area of upskilling that is enormously required. So this is one part of upskilling. The other is that some of the newer things which are more important today, in which pretty much everybody needs to also develop, is one of that is digital. And digital is just a simple label for many deep things which exist there. And therefore understanding, because tomorrow's decisions, already today in fact, are all based on algos, and therefore how do you really understand this? There's only so much that the human brain can process in all this world of data. So therefore an appreciation of digital, even if that's not part of your core, is one aspect. And second is this whole aspect of, given so many things are linked to so many other things, with the situation in Russia and Ukraine, how it is impacting every business in every other area, what happened in COVID pandemic and how everything else got impacted. So all of this shows in terms of what is the level of appreciation you have for systems thinking. Quite often you look at simple models of input, process, output. That's not good enough in your new world. And therefore, how do you really look at that systems thinking is another capability that one must upskill. And in some sense, building scenarios. There's no one tomorrow that you can visualize today and say that that's what I will move towards, and therefore this is what I will do. And therefore your capability of building scenarios and then potential, the way in which things will play out. So these are some of the areas that you need to build capability in. So the basic tools probably will remain the same, whether it is training, is essentially a cohort coming together and then discussing things, looking at a few case labs, doing something on the job and doing it or reading, and then doing it through this three sites and then three important capabilities. Broadly, this would be a space of upskilling that I can talk about.
Yeah. So I think there is a scope for, I mean, rather there is a lack of opportunities to do short assignments or short internships in many areas where one does all the equip oneself with the technical or theoretical knowledge, but to really operationalize it and then understand the challenges, nuances. I feel there is that gap, at least in India. I don't know about the Western world. In ITC specifically, what's the nature of internships that you guys offer?
Yeah, there's a fairly strong interface with the academia in ITC. There are multi-tier internship programs. The flagship one, branded as Kites, which to all the top tier technology and management institute students come in. And given the typical rush for the recruitment time, interviews and all that, the internships become the first stage at which somebody is evaluated. The usual PPOs and PPIs happen post that. So that is one. And similarly for other tier institutions and all of that, there are plenty of similar kind of internships where one really deploys. And extraordinary kind of output that I see from many of these interns on how they spend on the real problems and then work with our own supervisors and the guides and their own faculty and then build it. So I think good academic institutions where the faculty participates seriously, and besides, of course, our own teams participating seriously, helping out the intern to produce an outcome that is meaningful. It is a great application and where required unlearning, relearning opportunity for interns. In addition to this kind of a program, which typically is 8-week, 12-week, and that kind of program in multiple rounds in a year, quite often we have many short-term assignments and programs also with many institutions where we really have specific problems which are these institutions are engaged with, and then they deploy students to do that. And some of these are also floated not necessarily just for students of academic institutions where we have partnerships with, but also open problems that whether they are through a platform for incubation from the existing startups or in those kind of areas also, because you may have moved into a job. It's not anymore an internship, but it's another method of collaborative engagement that it just broadens the platform on which they are engaging in solving problems. That also happens. It's a 365-day affair with one or the other kind of activities from all these kind of multiple areas. And we see that that's an infusion of a lot of fresh thinking into whatever that we do. So it's a very important area from multiple perspectives.